Welcome everyone to Contemporary Issues class. So nice to have you here on a nice snowy February morning. And the 9 o'clock service was about half full, but we've got a good crowd here today. Thank you for coming to talk about doubt and uncertainty today, and a little book review of a new book by the Reverend Adam Hamilton of Kansas City about wrestling with doubt, primarily religious doubt, but it applies to all of life too. So whether you have doubts or you're completely certain about everything you believe, you are welcome here today, because our welcome is wide. So with that, our usual announcements before we get started. Zoomers, nice to have 15 or more of you today here from around the world, including Susan from Toronto. And please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen. Hi, Jean, I see you there too. And we are recording this on YouTube for future playback for those who can't be here and want to see it later. And any other announcements? Vicki has an announcement about a potluck we're having 2 weeks from today.
Yes, we talked about maybe having a quarterly potluck, class potluck. So I've scheduled it, and it will be 2 weeks from today on the 18th. We're going to meet across the hall in the room over there, because this room has somebody that comes right in after class. So we will provide drinks and cutlery and silverware, and plates and stuff. So just bring a potluck dish to share if you can, and we'll meet across the hall and go from maybe 11:30 to, I've got it scheduled 11:30 to 1:30. So plan on it.
Okay.
Do you know whether or not we could drop off our food before we go into services and stuff?
I'm sure you could. There's not gonna be anybody in there, so it's free on Sunday nights. So like if you have a crock pot or something, whatever, you can do that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, any other announcements, publicity, things in the news? Boy, the Middle East is sure an evolving, continuing issue. I think it's so interesting. Ukraine has died down, quiet about that. But Middle East, our response, the Houthis, all these small groups that are attacking us, and how do we respond to that without making a wider war? I just think it's kind of fascinating the way all of these elements are coming together in that. Any thoughts?
I think we can put in a plug for Firing Line.
Yes. PBS show on Friday nights.
Right. They had an interview with David Petraeus,
Yeah.
and he discussed quite a bit in regards to the Israeli Gaza situation and also Ukraine. Some good, well thought, intelligent comments that everybody ought to hear, I think.
That you don't hear in the regular media.
Well, let's see, the host of that, she is the granddaughter of former
Herbert Hoover.
President Herbert Hoover.
Oh.
And her name is
Margaret Hoover.
Margaret Hoover.
Yeah, on PBS at 7 o'clock on Friday nights.
What were some of the thoughts?
In a nutshell, my take on it, Petraeus has incredible, good, intelligent information, but on the Gaza situation, he said it's a very, very delicate and complex situation. There's no simple, easy solution. It was going to be painful, hard decisions made both politically and militarily. Probably going to cost a lot of lives and go on for quite a long time. Did he mention it? Did he think a two-state solution was probably, or no, I guess he didn't say that.
That's been tossed around.
And then he goes into Ukraine and amplifies that beware of isolationism, thinking that we in America can kind of just build a force field around the United States and pretend that the rest of the world doesn't exist.
And if Putin is allowed to continue, then Moldova will be
Moldova, Lithuania
Yeah,
are the
those
two
two.
most,
likely.
and we better not put blinders on and pretend we can sing that song, Make the World Go Away.
Very good.
guess the big question is, do we defend these countries?
Or maybe to what degree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always taxpayer money.
How long do we
Yeah.
keep?
How
Paying
long
at this
are we
level,
gonna-
Yeah,
You know, it just seems like the rest of the world wants to drain the United States. I mean,
But
they
he
want-
acknowledged that Europe is stepping up to the plate.
Yeah.
yeah,
And they've been begging them to do that for
Yeah.
decades.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but they have stepped forward. They just approved a $52 billion relief plan for the.
yeah, amazing. Go ahead.
So one of the really sick things that happens with the funding for Ukraine is that most of the money is going towards ammunition making, which is direct jobs for the United States.
Yeah.
So basically, we're borrowing money to pay for our people to work and make ammunitions that they actually use in Ukraine. So why anybody doesn't support that from us to go ahead and have Ukraine fight Russia for us is really astounding to me. That they don't realize that what we're doing with our money is paying ourselves.
Yeah,
And it's not talked about enough in order for that to actually happen. It should, every time we do Ukraine, it's like, yeah, we should do it. And it's just one of those things. But
That's
the thing
because
is,
it's right up to the border right now.
I'm sorry,
The reluctance is because the Senate wants to do something at the border before they'll release the funds.
well, that whole orchestration about what they want, how they want to structure deals.
We're gonna revisit
Yeah,
Ukraine and the border and these social issues that we like to talk about, so we can easily do an hour here just on this deal.
yeah, you betcha.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump in and talk about this. Reverend Adam Hamilton, if anybody's not familiar with him, of Kansas City, is the pastor of the largest Methodist church in the country, excuse me, where Vicky and I came from for 25 years. We attended there. And this guy writes a book every summer on his sabbatical leave during the summers. And his latest book is about doubt, because he says that he was thinking about this as people come in to counsel with him, not only about religious doubts, does God exist as a personal God, but also they come in and say, I'm getting married, I have doubts about if I picked the proper spouse, how do I deal with those doubts? All kinds of things. And so he starts out this book by saying, doubt doesn't bother some people at all, while others, it can disrupt their lives to a large degree. Many people doubt that, or many people believe doubt surely displeases God. And so for God's sake, they can't allow themselves to admit to having a religious doubt. It implies a weak faith or even sin for them. Most of us wrestle with doubts from time to time, but it can become particularly pronounced in the face of adversity. So he sees a lot of people come in times of adversity. There are three reactions that people have when they face adversity and their doubts increase. First one is some people reject everything they've learned growing up about the faith that they had, and they turn completely away from God. Second one is some people suppress their questions and retreat to an intractable faith that's filled with certainties like fundamentalism, which often offers certainty in an inerrant Bible and lots of reassurance. And so I thought that was an interesting reaction. But the third option is to face doubts head on and carefully examine these assumptions of the faith that we have, because in truth, it can help strengthen our faith. The Bible's filled with stories of people who had their doubts. Abraham and Sarah thought they were too old that's okay, to have children. Moses offered excuses and had doubts about his leadership ability. So many of the people, and Mary, of course, when she conceived by the Holy Spirit, had doubts about whether she was going to be a good mother and capable of that. And so he starts out like that. And just to give you a quick review, this little book is only 160 pages, has just 6 chapters where he talks then about some of the major areas where people have religious doubts. Is there a God? How do we understand the Bible? And why does that cause doubts? Are all non-Christians going to hell? Is heaven real? When prayers go unanswered? And why do the innocent people suffer? So some of those big questions. He likes to tackle those.
Is that a
Yes.
follow-on to that book?
No, this is a different book here. This is by Brian McLaren, another pastor,
Okay.
but this is more about deconstructing and reconstructing your faith. So this
Oh,
is,
okay. He's that
Talks
author we read
about-
last year.
yes, we read him last year too. Yes, so. But that doesn't deal with doubt also.
That might be better.
Okay,
If I could interject a quick
Sure.
thought.
anybody go ahead and jump in.
Next week, we're gonna talk a little bit about splitting faith into practice, in other words, how you live your life. And the other side is belief, structural things you believe. And I'm coming to the opinion that, what if you're a total mess in terms of your beliefs and theology? And you're full of doubt, but what if you can excel on the other side of the ledger? If you're kind, loving, compassionate, seeking justice, I think you can find a deep inner peace. So even if you have tremendous doubts that are on the other side of the ledger, but if you live a life every day to the best that you can, if you live the loving part of it, I think you're gonna be in good shape.
Good thought.
That's me.
Good thought.
That's right.
That's you. Good. Okay. I want to share with you the definition of doubt from the dictionary. Doubt is a mental state in which the mind remains suspended between two contradictory propositions and is uncertain about them. Doubt on an emotional level is indecision between belief and disbelief. I thought that was interesting, an indecision. So that made me think of, I put up here on our little board as to a box in which represents your mind. For example, you hold belief and disbelief at the same time to some degree. You might have 99% belief and only 1% disbelief, but you still hold those and they're in opposition to some degree. And so it causes an indecision to some degree. It may involve uncertainty or lack of conviction regarding facts, motives, or decisions that you have. Doubt can also result in the delaying of action out of concern for mistakes that you'll make. Doubt can cause you to make mistakes. But doubt as a path toward deeper belief is exemplified by the story of Saint Thomas the Apostle, doubting Thomas, in which he expressed his disbelief, but it led to a deeper belief. So good example there. Disbelief or doubt is at the core of science and the scientific method.
Yep.
It's the starting point, not only methodical doubt, but it's called positive doubt. And it's the starting point in which scientists begin their explorations. Christian existentialists such as Soren Kierkegaard also suggest that for a person to truly have belief in God, one would have to doubt one's belief in God and then examine those beliefs. So to have a true faith, a strong faith, Kierkegaard advocated that. The scientific method, again, tries to quantify doubt and uses it to determine whether further research is needed. So that's a little basic definition about doubt. Does that make sense? Is it a good comparison to the scientific method? But of course, we can't do that with religion. It's a different animal.
When you were talking about how some people think that we shouldn't doubt, that it's. I kept thinking of that passage, that verse in James where it says, let that man who doubts not expect anything good to come out of his doubts.
What an excellent
Yeah.
segue. Thank you. Eric, you're to look at this, and I've shared on the screen here a couple of Bible quotes and other quotes about doubt that I think are very enlightening. James 1:6 says, "But let him ask in faith with no doubting. For the one who doubts is like a wave on the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind." Good analogy. And Jesus is quoted as saying, "Truly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what has been done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, it will happen." So those seem to me to be a little in opposition to what our Reverend Mark Feldmeyer here and Reverend Hamilton are saying.
Yeah.
They say embrace doubt, face it and use it to become stronger. So we might discuss why those are different. Okay, a couple other, I think, wonderful quotes. One is, "I tore myself away from the safe comfort of certainties through my love for truth, and truth rewarded me." Rudyard Kipling quote, "A woman's guess is much more accurate than a man's certainty."
That's a fact.
Is that a fact?
Amen.
Okay, I knew you'd like that one. "The only certainty is that nothing is certain." Pliny the Elder, I think he was an early church historian, famous person. Francis Bacon said, "If a man begins with certainties, he shall end in doubts. But if he's content to begin with doubts, he shall end in certainties." The usefulness of starting with doubts. Eric Fromm said, "Creativity requires the courage to let go of certainties." A good thought for artists. And Voltaire said, "Doubt is not a pleasant condition, but certainty is absurd." I like that one too.
How about John 11:26b?
What was that one?
Believest thou this?
Believest thou this?
Yeah, that's the second half of the verse.
Okay. Okay. Let me stop there for a second and ask, what do you have doubts about? Do you have doubts about your religious faith in particular? Before we go on with the rest of the book,
Not the basics, but the other,
not the basics, but
the sidelines, the other things,
smaller
smaller.
doctrine things, okay? Okay. How certain are you that there is a personal God who exists? Anybody? Would you want to put a number to it? Are you 50% certain? Are you 90% certain? And does your level of uncertainty bother you? How about anybody on Zoom? As I throw out that big question. Dawson or anybody? Lola, yes, you got your hand. Go ahead.
Well, I had never thought about this before, but I overthink everything, and so that includes my religion. But I compensate for my amount of doubt. It balances out with my faith.
Okay,
So that kind of helps me deal with the doubt.
okay, good point. How often does your doubt come up?
Me specifically?
Sure, Lola, go ahead, or anybody.
I didn't know if you were talking to me. Oh, I have doubt about everything. I mean, it's always there. It's kind of a way of thinking, analytical, and right hand, left hand, plastic or paper, is God or is not.
That's a little
Well, there's a third alternative, flaw.
claw. Steve said there's a third alternative claw.
I think
Yeah,
I'd
so
rather
there's-
have doubt than certainty.
Okay, why is that?
Well, because, I think that when you have certainty, I think, sometimes you could be stuck in a mindset, whereas if you have doubt, you are pliable, you're open to comment and open to understanding. The older I get, I find that it is more comfortable for me to be open-minded about where somebody's coming from
Amen.
than it used to be, because it's so easy to be critical when you are certain about something, but when you're left open, you can be more.
So going right along with that, and Mark's sermon today,
Mhm.
doubt is the wrong word for me for the mood. Okay, and I propose the word for me that's more real is curiosity.
Mm.
Okay, because curiosity provides some openness, some more, what else that there is on this versus the depression side of it. You know, that kind
Yeah.
of mood. So
That's good.
There's strong evidence, more than evidence, positive evidence that Mother Teresa lost her faith at least 20 years before she passed away. But
What does that mean?
her belief in God, even the existence of God. On the other side of the coin, her resolve to serve mankind and humankind grew stronger than ever. There was also a case of, and David Wilkerson mentioned. He, of course, wrote this Cross and the Switchblade, a book from the early 60s. But he said this one young lady came to him and said to him, I have got real doubts about there being a creator. However, I would very much like to help you. I'm willing to hold vomit buckets while these drug addicts throw up and help clean up the place and serve food. And he said, I'll take that. I'll take that faith of yours any day. So.
Good point. Hamilton talks a little bit about this and says, of course, if we doubt our beliefs, we ought to go back and look at how we formed our beliefs too. And just a few elements of that, of course, are we examine evidence when we try to form a decision or a belief. And as Methodists, we use the Wesley quadrilateral, scripture, tradition, reason, and experience to try to come to a good decision. And with the question of, is there a God? Adam also talks a little bit about the near-death experiences, and I'll read a few quotes about that, that being something that people point to as a possible evidence for the afterlife. And also the smartest people in the world. Some people in forming their beliefs look to models of people who are the smartest, most educated in the world on these topics. And on that, I want to read a little quote out of my own book, a little book that I did years ago called 50 Questions for Thinking Christians. And one of the questions was, do the smartest people believe in a creator? And so let me just read to you some of my thoughts on that. Among some Christians, there's the occasional thought that perhaps the smartest people in the world have the right answers, have come to a more educated decision than the rest of us. Scientists, for example, are often seen as the smartest people. They think deeply and try to figure out the physical laws of the universe. So what do they believe about God? Albert Einstein, among the greatest, did not believe in a personal God, but he wrote, the problem involved is too vast for our limited minds. The child dimly suspects a mysterious order in the arrangement of books, for example, but doesn't know what it is. That, it seems to me, is the attitude of even the most intelligent human towards God. So Einstein seemed agnostic, unsure if a creative, intelligent mind was behind the creation of the universe. Then Einstein's final opinions were shared in a letter he wrote a year before his death in 1954. He wrote to a friend that, quote, the word God for me is nothing more than an expression and a product of human weakness. And the Bible is a collection of honorable but primitive legends, which are nevertheless pretty childish. No interpretation is going to change this for me. So this was what, that he shared later in his life. On the other hand, there are scientists today who believe a personal God is a most likely rational decision to believe in. One of those is Francis Collins, the American physician and leader of the Human Genome Project and director of the National Institutes of Health. He's written books on science, medicine, and religion, and he believes strongly in a personal God. Of course, many high IQ scientists, doctors, lawyers, and others are on different parts of the belief spectrum. They too are subject to their biases from their teachers and their upbringings. Studies have tried to analyze the religious beliefs of the smartest people. A 1921 study at Stanford involved 1,500 children whose IQ exceeded 135. The data was examined in 1995 and released, and the conclusion was that these high IQ children were less religious than those in the general public. However, what was remarkable about the data was that in spite of their atheism, 60% of the children were brought up in very strict religious homes. And so there is also a belief that these children rebelled against their upbringing. So lots of weighing in. What do you think about that? Do you think that it matters what some of the smartest people think? Einstein or Hawking? Do you think they can be objective in their comments about religion? Eric.
I probably told this story before, but I heard Francis Collins speak at a biotechnology symposium in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I was teaching AP biology at a private school, and I brought my 12 or 14 students, checked out a school van and went to this symposium. And it was the first time in my life that I'd heard there's a third option for the origin of life. Because up until that point, I'd been going to evangelical churches, and it was this, I call it the false dichotomy. You got to believe in creation or evolution, but there's nothing else. And Collins was the first one that pointed out that you can believe in both in creation and in evolution. It was enlightening for me to finally hear somebody articulate what I felt intuitively for so many years because of teaching science. And at the end of his talk, he said that a little girl, she said, well, if you believe in creation and evolution, at what point did the spirit come into man? And I loved his answer, because this is a man of science. He hesitated and he said, I don't know. It's perfect.
Good answer. Yeah.
Just a little more on this topic. Adam Hamilton quotes Stephen Hawking, the English astronomer, physicist, as saying that science has no need for a creator, a first mover today for the creation of the universe. And so Hamilton takes the opposite side of this. He says we can consider also that the theoretical physicist who first proposed the Big Bang around 1930, George Lemaitre, was a Catholic priest who strongly continued to believe in a personal God. The Big Bang seems to require to have someone light the fuse as the prime mover or the uncaused cause.
Yeah.
Hawking acknowledges that the one remaining area that religion can now lay claim to is the origin of the universe. Adam says, to me, Hawking's proposal cannot be proved, of course, but scientists will continue to uncover the laws and mathematical formulas of the cosmos, but that does not render God unnecessary, as Hawking suggests. Our answer is a choice, and we'll probably never come to a proof or disproof of the existence of God through science or mathematics. What do you think of that one?
That was good.
Zoomers, I want to offer you a chance to come in here. Gene, you have your hand up. Go ahead,
Well,
sir.
I think, thank you, Steve. Those are great insights. Some of our most intelligent people are also tend to be the most humble. I think in terms of the astronauts to go up and when they see planet Earth, how their mindset is so dramatically altered. They get out of their own silos and see the bigger picture. So I think this is the variety of options you're providing certainly is food for thought, but certainly humility goes along with intelligence, I think, when it comes to this issue.
Those are the ones I admire too, that say, I might be wrong. I don't know. I don't really know yet. Instead of sounding so certain. Excuse me. Okay, well, I want to play a 5-minute video of Rev. Mark Feldmeyer's sermon from about 3 weeks ago, I believe, in which he talked about doubt and uncertainty and how it's an important part of faith. Maybe it's intended to be that way. God doesn't reveal himself completely to us so that we have questions and continue to search. So let me try and run this for 4 or 5 minutes. Sound sharing. And see what you think about this. We will discuss afterwards.
A point, the only true wisdom is knowing that we know practically nothing. And that's when we have to make a choice. It's one of the hardest choices we'll ever have to make in life. It's the choice between grasping after certainty or living with a certain degree of unknowing. What makes this such a difficult choice is that we are such slaves to certainty. The need for certitude in almost every area of our lives is deeply embedded in our nature. Trust does not come easy for any of us. We need proof, evidence, assurance, insurance, agreements, and guarantees before committing to almost anything. In business matters or our relationships, our personal dealings, we try to eliminate as much risk and achieve as much certainty as possible by doing due diligence or signing contracts, drafting prenuptials, getting second opinions, checking references. This is all how we control and manage uncertainty in our lives. And it's often wise and sensible. But this overwhelming need for certainty often shapes our understanding of God. Our reluctance to trust anything in general is only deepened by faith's daring call to trust in something or someone we can't actually see or touch or even prove, like God. And this presents a paradox for many Christians. Can I live with a certain degree of unknowing? Can I believe in God, trust God, without being certain about everything? Or will I grasp after answers and doctrines or dogmas that promise to eliminate the unknowing that's inherent with faith? So much of modern Christianity, especially Americanized Christianity, is anchored on the promise of human certainty instead of the promise of God's enduring, undying love for us. It promises that if you just say this prayer, or believe these doctrines, or follow these rules, or read the Bible this way, or write that check, you'll get into heaven. You'll earn God's blessing, you'll avoid God's wrath, and you'll escape suffering and hardship in this life. That's when faith gets reduced to a mere transaction, and certainty becomes the prize. In our quest for certainty about who God is and how God works, some Christians become like that child on the beach who digs a hole in the sand and then, with their little plastic bucket, feverishly begins transferring the ocean into it, back and forth, one bucket at a time. Her efforts are naive and futile, but everyone finds them cute because she's just a child. But wouldn't we hope that someday she would grow up and finally understand that no ocean could ever be contained in any hole of any size, on any beach, on any continent? There are many Christians who confuse love for their hole in the sand with love for God. And their certainty becomes an idol. But what if God's hope for us is something like our hope for that child on that beach? Because isn't it true that it's simply impossible to contain the God of the universe, the boundless, ineffable mystery and presence of God in any human container, like a doctrine or a theological system, or even in any one religion? If that's true, then the unknowing we often fear is actually unavoidable. In fact, it's baked into the experience of faith, which is a wonderful thing, because absolute certainty of any kind is really a fallacy. We cannot be absolutely certain of anything in life. Lori and I started dating when we were 16. Yeah, we've been together for 40 years, married for 34. I know Lori better than any other human on this planet. I'm pretty sure that she loves me. I mean, all the signs suggest that she loves me, not the least of which is she actually tells me so sometimes. I've got a lot riding on this belief, by the way, and yet, how can I be absolutely certain that she loves me? It's like that line from B.B. King, which I've repeated a million times. No one loves me but my mama, and she might be jiving me too. We all live with some degree of knowing and unknowing. Christianity was never meant to resolve this paradox. Certainty was never the goal of Jesus. Certainty was never one of Paul's fruits of the Spirit. Instead, what Jesus and later Paul taught was that God could only be found in the tension, the darkness between knowing and unknowing. Jesus.
Okay, let's stop there. Well, how does that strike you? Does it bother you to hear a pastor say, we can't know anything for certain?
Oh, yeah.
That is I think not a common message that you would hear in many churches.
I would have been one of those people knocking on his door saying, if you pray this prayer, but as many as received him, to them give ye power to become children of God, John 1:12. I would have been one of those people.
But a lot of the early Jewish teachings and Jewish practices were in accepting the mystery and discussing and saying, yes, this passage is mysterious. Here's what I think. Here's what other people think. And so in leaving the mystery and unknown there, whereas fundamentalist religions today want to be certain about it.
Yep.
Does that sound right?
I also think that a lot of people don't realize that certainty is not certain, you know? That, and it takes a little bit of living and maturity to realize that, you know, because just because we said before God that we are gonna love each other till death, that's not certain. I mean, it's bound to a certain extent, but it's not certain. There is no certainty. But I couldn't accept that as a young person. I needed certainty as a young person. I needed it all comfortable right here so that I could hold on to it and know that I had this, you know.
The Nazarene Church gave that to you.
Well, not just the Nazarene Church, that anybody that taught me anything, if I grabbed it with certainty, then it became in my box. But the older I got and life experiences that I have taught me that there is no certainty, but that's okay because that's life and you just evolve out of that, you know. But when I was younger, I needed certainty. I needed to hang on to the facts that I was taught, you know, so.
I still do.
Eric said, I still do to some degree. We all do. We all want certainty to some degree. Yeah,
John 14:6.
yeah. Zoomers, any thoughts on that? Anybody else come from a conservative background that provided certainty and made a journey to the mysterious Methodist faith? Steve has his hand up here. Mhm.
Well, you consider the shirt I have on.
You sure says what? Believer, okay. Okay, one of the key parts of Adam Hamilton's book here is about people, of course, have many doubts about if there is real evidence of life after death, and many do point to the near-death experience. Many people have. And so
Hey,
Adam
Steve?
said, yes,
Before we go on, I think Toby and had a comment.
Oh,
okay, I'm sorry.
no,
Hi,
no,
Toby. Yeah, hi, Toby. Go ahead. I didn't see your hand. Sorry.
it wasn't important. You could go on, but I was just gonna say that anybody who at any time looks at the vastness of the universe or starts to think about that can't help but have uncertainty. And frankly, certainty bothers me because I think it's artificial.
Artificial, good word. Okay. That's an interesting way to phrase it. Okay, thank you.
But again, I come back every day to,
Eugene,
well, if I'm struggling in the belief area, but in my life, most people look at me, not did Ron believe real hard with intensity, with perspiration pouring out of his forehead, or how did he treat me today? Did he show kindness, compassion, care? And if you ask my wife, if Ron screwed up this week, it won't be because he didn't read enough Bible verses. It's because he missed listening to me. Yeah, I messed up in the practice of my faith, not the belief side of it.
But that could be both and not necessarily one exclusive from the other.
Okay, very good. Just share with you a little bit here about the evidence of life after death. Anybody else have a question? Somebody had their hand up? Gene, go ahead.
Unmute.
I gotta unmute first, Gene.
Okay, okay.
There you go. Yes, we hear you now.
Some of us may have an advantage too, Steve, in our upbringing. If we were fortunate enough to have loving parents who practiced what they believe, don't you think it's easier to transition into a more certain confidence that what you do believe is valid and true? It just gives some people, I think, a heads up. If they've had a cruel father or a cruel mother and didn't practice, it makes it a much more arduous task to, in quotes, be a believer. Don't you think that our upbringings oftentimes impact our belief systems?
Yes, and our own personalities too. Adam mentions that in the book, that some people's personalities, self-confidence leads them to more easily be certain and form beliefs with stronger evidence, as opposed to those who are, we should say, weaker, have more self-doubt. So that all feeds into it. Good point. Okay, just briefly.
No, Gene's onto something, but what about people that crater? Not throw out any cause about it, but if you crater and then your only way out is to start becoming a believer.
Become a what?
Believe in something else than what is your circumstance as to the reason why you're cratering. Fill in the blank about whatever it is that why you've lost everything in your life and why you want to turn your life around. It's legit.
Okay. Very good. Okay, I want to share this with you. Evidence of life after death, the cause of great doubt among people about the afterlife. Adam says that one of his greatest resources that he's seen recently has been a book by Dr. Sam Parnia, a PhD and medical doctor at New York University, who did a study of folks who had the near-death experience from cardiac arrest. He says that all of these patients that have reported the experience have been after the 20 seconds when the heart stops beating and the blood flow stops to the brain. Then there should be flatlining of the brain, and there should be no experience recorded of brain activity after that. He said Dr. Parnia says there should be no consciousness at this point. Yet these people report hearing conversations of their doctors and report being above their bodies and seeing the doctors working. And also we know that a common experience is going through a tunnel and having a calming experience of meeting a divine figure. Among other scientists, they say this is merely the process of the brain shutting down. But Parnia and others disagree that the brain should be flatlined at this point, and it should not be possible to have these experiences. This is intimately bound with what the New Testament authors described also. By the way, Dr. Parnia identifies as non-religious, says he is simply trying to follow the science and be open-minded. So it seems like there are, of course, differences among the scientists about what that is doing, but an important part. Colleen has shared with us in the past in this class about her near-death experience. Would you want to share with us again, just briefly, Colleen?
It really happened. I had a ruptured appendix that went undiagnosed for almost 10 days. And finally, I was married to a different person at that time. And he took me up to Seattle, and they put me in the hospital for surgery. And I had gangrene and everything, you know, I mean, and all these doctors came over to see me from the University of Washington. And anyway, the bottom line is that when I was out of surgery, they put me in intensive care. And all I remember was rising up above, and I had never read about this, and looking down and saw my body. And then my mom told me after I woke up that that they were calling my name, but I wasn't ready to go yet. So I wasn't done with whatever I need to do in my life. And that was just amazing. And what I saw when I was up looking down, I saw a bright light and a tunnel. And at the beginning of the tunnel, there were these spirits that kind of ghostly like, and they were going like this, you know, to come. But I said, I'm not ready. And so, but at the end of the tunnel, this light was just so amazing. And when you go to church and you get that feeling inside of you, you're talking about certainty. I can't explain that, but that's God. So yes, I
Now,
had
years
that.
later, Colleen, do you have doubts about that experience, or do you feel
I am
more certain about it?
I'm certain that occurred. Of course, you know, when you're really sick, they give you a lot of drugs. I mean, that's true. You know, I mean, excuse me, but my back end had so many shots in it with, what's that real strong one? Morphine.
Oh,
You know, I had so much morphine, and I realized, but no, there was a light, and I don't do drugs ordinarily, so it wasn't, you know, anything, but there is another dimension. Now, I didn't see any relatives. I didn't see God. I saw light for me, and I know that's God. That's the only thing I can say.
The Bible says God is light.
And I never read about it. I had never talked to anyone about it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know. I just know I had the experience.
Okay.
And the doctors came in later and they interviewed me. several doctors, because I was in the hospital for almost a month and they don't know why I live. You know, so there's a reason for everything,
Thank you
I
for sharing.
guess.
Thank you for sharing.
And I was teaching school at the time, like all my little kids sent me things and it was nice. But it happened.
It's an interesting area to study, as Adam says, because there are both sides of belief that some people, of course, believe this is just a brain chemical phenomenon, and others believe this is actually a glimpse into the afterlife, and nobody knows for sure yet. There's still doubts. Yes.
I guess, one thing that may create doubts, and I completely believe that, I do think that the light is God, but has there ever been a case where, you know, everybody is going towards the light? They may see the spirits, they may see, you know, prior family members that have passed away or whatever, but then they get pulled back or whatever happens. Has there ever been something where somebody like makes it to the light or stays there for a while, like, here's what it is like, more of a
Yeah.
permanent fate? Yeah.
Yeah, I was in the light for a long time and came back.
They said no.
Back to
not
the
yet.
darkness.
What amazes me are the people who were in Auschwitz. There was a film that we watched, I can't remember the name of it, where a woman made it through all of that and she still had her faith. And she still believed.
Corey Ten.
Corey Ten Boom.
Corey Ten Boom.
Corey Ten Boom.
Maybe that's it. And I just watched that and thought, oh my goodness, you know, after seeing all that.
This reminds me of some of my friends, including some folks that are not here today, but in our class, that say they don't believe anything that their senses can't experience in this life. So they don't believe in any afterlife, any spirits, anything. And so I say to them once in a while, what about, don't you know that we can't see all the colors there are in the world? We can't hear the range of sounds available that dogs can hear and other things.
Right.
So there are things beyond the human capability to experience
Oh, yeah.
that are invisible to us. So why can't we believe in things beyond what we can experience? Science proves there are colors and sounds that we can't
Like
experience.
the magnetic spectrum.
So why couldn't there be other dimensions that we just can't prove yet?
We only see that little part, Roy G.
We
Biv.
only see that little part of
Everything else.
spectrum. Everything else is out here.
Radio waves.
Yeah, but don't you think that before science started, you know, growing by leaps and bounds and finding out all of this stuff, it gave us, what we did know gave us certainty. But now that scientists are finding out so much more about what we thought was certain, you know, it gives us, you can either do one of two things. It can make you go one way or the other. You know, you can open your mind and be open to that kind of stuff, or you can just say no. Because I have a friend that said, well, you know, science is not always right. And I'm thinking, okay, the end of conversation, you know, but because they're not open
Well,
to it, their mind is closed.
Science changes over time also,
It
of
does,
course.
it does. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
As new theories emerge and are proven or disproven.
Einstein versus Newton.
Remember also the brain is the most complex things in the universe. And it's not just a simple circuit. It's billions of cells and neurons. And the different segments of it don't all shut down at the same instant. In other words, you might have the amygdala, the primitive lizard brain, last 30 seconds longer than the prefrontal cortex, which might last 40 seconds longer than the hippocampus. And the order of shutdown of the brain could create some very bizarre effects in terms of what you remember, what you think, and the last survivor before the entire network is down.
Well, and that may be true, but that doesn't remove her her certainty. It doesn't take away from her certainty.
All good points. Zoomers, any thoughts on that? Anybody? Okay, yes.
Yeah, there's a book and also TV segments about a physician out of UCLA who went down to Peru and went on a kayak trip and was flipped
Yes.
over and drowned in about 30 minutes. And her story is fascinating because she relates seeing the light, going to heaven, but then she got the message that it wasn't her time. However, 10 years later, that her son would meet a tragic death or would die.
Well,
And so she was revived, being rescued in this river. And she actually went back to practice as a physician, but she wrote a book about her experience and included in the book, and this was 10 years later, her son actually did pass away. And she went through the agony of whether or not to tell her son. Oh, wow. Whether or not, that her experience being in heaven, and that God or angel mentioned that you're gonna die. And eventually, she told him right before the year anniversary, that he was to die, and I'm sure.
Wow.
fascinating.
A lot of things to think about when you read that book.
Yes.
And,
I read her book too, and she says she feels certain that she went to heaven. And she went through all the medical doubts that she had and then arrived at the belief that she was certain. So another interesting case. Thank you for sharing. Yep. Okay. Any final thoughts as we wrap up? Doubts or certainties? Are you completely 100% certain you're gonna get home okay driving today after you go home? Is there 1%
Steve, I just have
doubt?
one.
Yes, go ahead, Susan.
So I've heard a quote by General Schwarzkopf, and he said, when you have 60% of the information, it's 100% too late.
Oh, very interesting. Yes, Obama talked about that too, how certain he had to feel before he made the order to get bin Laden. Remember that? He said he was like 90% certain, but the 10% tormented him because it could cost the lives of American soldiers. That was a good example of doubt and uncertainty and how that affects decision making. I thought too. So thank you for that, Susan. Yes. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. Next week, Ron is going to talk about why we affiliate with a church, what we get out of church and faith, why we make those kind of commitments.
We want a good discussion from everybody here and those that will attend next week in terms of why do you come here? Is it the great coffee and donuts? Is it the people? And yeah, and we really want to look into that. And then, why do you come to this class? Yeah, and what can we do better? Where can we change?
That's good.
Where can we change?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.